Good afternoon all. The book that I'm going to review today is We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So Adichie is actually a familiar face for his literature students. How many of you non-literature students knows her? Okay, so for those who are not familiar with her, let me introduce her to you. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is famously known as Adichie. She's a Nigerian writer who is known for her powerful and relatable storytelling. She writes on the topic like gender equality, social equalities, and culture, identity, and everyday life. She writes from her real life experience. So that is one of the attractive features of her writings. And what makes her unique is that she is able to bring out the very serious issues from our society in a very simple, natural, honest, and with the real life experiences. She doesn't use very difficult theories to show her thoughts. Instead, she uses simple language which is easily understandable for the common man. Because she wanted her writings, her teachings, her philosophies to spread across the people, not just be familiar for the scholarly ones. And what makes her for me, what I found interesting in the book is that she really went inside the society to understand how women are being excluded from the mainstream of the society by the oppressive male domination. But what I felt is that unlike other feminist writings, she doesn't portray women as prey and men as predators. Instead, she portrays men and women are the victims of this society, of the social expectations. That is one of the attractive things that I found in this book. And let's dive into the book. Before that, let me say this book was actually a speech which she delivered in a TEDx talk, which she delivered in 2012, because she felt it was very needful to speak about feminism. In her speech, she delivered her thoughts, her ideas about feminism, the notions of feminism, because she thought that it is necessary, it is relevant in our day-to-day lives of men as well as women, not only women. That is the main point which I'd like to highlight. And the introductory part of the book. In this book, she talks about some of the stereotypes. She says that stereotypes shapes our belief, shapes our thought, shapes human thinking. For example, when you think about the word Africa, the first image that comes in your mind is a land filled of poverty. The countries in Africa is uncivilized. The people are living a barbaric life. Children dying of malnutrition and starvation. So this is the image that first comes to your mind when we think about Africa. Adichie says that this image has been given to us by the Westerners, and she says that not everything is false. There was a time where Africa was living in poverty, when the people were in poverty, but today, fast forward to the 21st century, it is one of the countries in Africa, it is one of the fastest developing cities it has, and the image which we have is completely wrong. That is what she says in the introduction. And another thing she notes is that the term feminism, like the term Africa, the term feminism is also built around this stereotype. That is the first image that comes in our mind when we say feminist is a woman who hates man, a man hating women. And Adichie felt this immense need to rectify this thought of the people. And that is why in 2012 she delivered this speech. And in 2014, this book was published based on her speech, making some alterations to her speech. And so let's dive into the book. So the book is filled with her real life experiences, her childhood memories, her memories from her adulthood. So it is passing over through many of her memories. And so I couldn't combine everything here. So I just point out important points which she wants to say. And one thing that you have to notice is that she doesn't portray the big issues in this book. Instead, she portrays issues which are very minute, which we, not only men, which we as a women, we tend to ignore. Some of the inequalities which we tend to ignore, she notifies all these small things in this book. Because she says that if we ignore these small things, one day it will grow up to become a very big issue. And it is very much necessary for us to stop it from the root. So she begins the book by remembering about her friend of her, very close friend of her. His name was Opolama. He sadly passed away in a plane crash. He remembers him, she mourns his death, and she says that at the age of 14, he was the first one, he was like a big brother to her, he was the first one to call her a feminist. Because they were having an argument with the half-knowledge readings from non-fiction books and other essays. Both of them, they were having an argument. And in that argument, between the argument, he stopped her and he called her that you are a feminist. And Adichie, by the time the age of 14, she didn't understand what is the meaning of feminist, but she pretended to know that. And but one thing that she could understand from his tone was that it wasn't a compliment. It was like rather an insult, like how you say that you are a terrorist. It was rather an insult. She understood that, and she pretended that she understood it, and then she went back home. And the first thing she did was to look up this word in the dictionary, what this word feminist means. And this story ends here. Actually, she doesn't talk about this next, but there is a point where this comes, and I will say you at the last. But the second part is that she goes with another childhood another memory of her. Is that fast forward many years. In 2003, Adichie published a book titled The Purple Hibiscus. It was about a man who constantly used to abuse his husband, his wife, and it was a feminist writing. And in a press meet, a very young, very middle-aged, good-looking, a person who didn't mean any harm, such a gentleman approached her, and he said to her, like he shook his head in sadness, and he said to her, you know what, your writings are feminist kind of writings, and people are calling you a feminist. And his expression was so sad, like it was something a bad word. And she was unable to understand why he was so sad, because she flaunts it very happily. She flaunts the word feminist, title feminist, to her name. But this person commented, advised her that it is something bad that you should be ashamed of. Instead, he advised her that the word feminist, according to them, means a woman who is unable to find husbands, a woman who is unhappy because she is not able to find husband. So, Adichie in her speech, she mockingly says that, then right now I am a happy feminist. I am happy because I am able to find a husband. I don't need a husband, and I am happy for that. And secondly, continuing this, she says that she once met a very old lady who said to her that this term feminist is an un-African word. It is a word that was brought from the Westerners, and she was influenced by this Western civilization. And then Adichie says that, and this old woman said to Adichie that she is moving away from her roots, she is going to the Western life, and all this is wrong. Being a feminist is wrong. And for this, in her speech, years later when she made the speech, she says that, right now I am a happy African feminist. So I am sticking to by calling herself an African feminist, I am sticking to my own roots. I am not going to the Western civilization. So happy African feminist. And later, years later, one of her friends, she said to her that a feminist is someone who hates men. And this time for this, in her speech, Adichie says that I am a happy African feminist who does not hate men. And likewise, over the years, she met many people who had different opinions about feminism. And by this time, her definition of feminism also started to be elaborated. And finally, it reached to I am a happy African feminist who does not hate men, who likes to wear lip gloss, who likes to wear lipstick, who likes to wear heels. And it continued to evolve, her definition of feminism. And this is one of the incidents. And now she goes back to her childhood memories. She says that it is one day she wanted to become a class monitor. At the age of 19, she wanted to become a class monitor. This time, the teacher said to the class, they declared that there will be a test happening, and whoever comes first in the test will be the class monitor. So Adichie, at the age of 9, she was so ambitious to become the class monitor, just because the powers a class monitor has. They will be able to write the names on the board, and then those people will be able to get punishment. And she was so ambitious to be the class monitor. She wanted to walk around the class with a cane and terrorize everyone. And so that she taking that as an aim, she studied hard for the examination. And when the result came, she was the one who topped the class. But when the teacher came and declared that the class monitor would be the guy who came second, would be the boy. So she didn't make it, she didn't say that she specified the gender, that it would be a guy who would be the monitor. And Adichie was so confused, and she questioned the teacher, and then the teacher said that the teacher's response wasn't it obvious that only a guy could come first, only a guy could lead. So by this, Adichie says that in leadership, when we say the term leader, the first image that comes in our mind is obviously a man. She questions this ideology of the society. And this is where Adichie says that if you ignore these small things, actually these when the for years the boys were the leaders of the class monitors, and this is how the teacher got the idea that only boy would be allowed to be the leader. And Adichie says that something is recurring again and again, it would be normalized, and that is how the boy became the leader, because it was something that was normalized in the minds of the teacher, minds of the society, and that thing should actually be changed, is what Adichie says. And another incident she remembers is that one day she was in a parking lot with one of her male friend Louis, and by this time a random boy came and helped them to park their car. And this time she took money from her purse and she handed over to him for his hard work, for helping them park the car. This boy took the money, happily he took the money from Adichie. He turned to the man Louis next side, and he said to him, "Thank you, sir." He thanked him, and Adichie was so confused, and even the man Louis was so confused by this action of the boy. And this is, Adichie says that it is not the problem of the boy. She doesn't blame him. Instead she says that this is what the society has taught him, that the money the woman will be having in her purse is the money that a man would give to you, because women cannot be financially stable. She would not have money in her pockets, and whatever it is, whatever her financial stability comes from the man she is with. So this is one of the ideologies she criticizes. And it just says that the only reason that man is stronger than women is because of their hormones. They have high level of testosterone than women. Only 5% of the women might be physically stronger than man, but majority is a man who is definitely physically stronger than a woman. And this is because she says that if you go back years to the ancient times, man fought for food. A man fought beasts, monsters, creatures, and all these things, and they had to lead, and naturally they evolved to become so strong, have so many muscles. And the women and children, they were taken to the wings of the man naturally in those times. And Adichie says that it was years back. Now we are not surviving for food. Now we are not fighting for food. We are not fighting any beasts and creatures. And the world today doesn't need a physically stronger person. Instead needs a person who is intellectually stronger, who can guide the world mentally, not physically. So hormones has nothing to do with the ability of a woman to lead, to come in a position of a leader. And another incident she then recalls is that years before, when she, as a writer, she had so many places to go, so many promotions to do of her novel. And one day, when she went to a hotel, when she was standing in the lobby, the security or someone arrived there and asked her, he called her a sex worker, because at that time the society thought that if a woman is entering into a hotel alone, she would be a sex worker, not a guest. They didn't see the ability of a woman to be a guest. They considered her to be a sex worker who is dependent on a man for money. And she recalls it in a very sad manner, because she is not getting recognized as a writer or as a woman. Instead, she is called a sex worker for no reason. And the next incident she recalls is that when she was at a restaurant with Louis, the waiter actually bowed down to him. Like when they entered into the restaurant, the waiter bowed down to him, welcomed him. This time Adichie felt so invisible, because she was entering with a man, she was with a man, and still she was seen as invisible. And she is so saddened by this. She, in the speech, in 2012, when she delivered the speech, she says that, didn't a man at least think that they have to change the society, they have to change the perspective of the society, that they have to say to the boy or the whomever is discriminating that treat her the same way that you're treating me. No man in the world ever felt the need to rectify this. She is questioning the society. And the next thing she addresses is that how men are supposed to live in a cage, how they are trapped in a cage called masculinity. Because in the name of masculinity, men are not supposed to cry. Men are supposed to be the hard man without feelings. And she says that emotion is something which is naturally occurring. Tears are something which our body, which our eyes really needs. It is not something to be suppressed. And she says that men are actually suffocating in this cage, and the society should actually develop so the man can be vulnerable if he needs to be. They do not have to be this hard man the society wants them to be. And he then talks about there's a stereotype that when a man and a woman go on a date, it is the man who is supposed to pay. This is a kind of stereotype that is prevalent. But Adichie says that, Adichie is talking about the things which was in her times, not in the world we are living has obviously progressive. But she's talking about the times when she wrote this book. Okay, so she says that when the she says that the ability of the masculinity and the ability to pay money should not be connected, should not be linked. Rather than whomever has more money, let them pay. It doesn't have to be the man always has to be paid. And she says that this is the reason why a boy might be having the inner call to take money from their parents to do these kind of theft, because they are suppressed by the society, they are forced by the society to act masculine, which they do not have to be. And another thing she addresses is that women, how from the earlier times, how women are always made to be likable by men. They are always asked to, even if in our cases we have been asked by our parents to talk politely, dress politely, to walk politely, to not show our anger out, because we are creatures with emotions and we do have to let our anger out. But when a girl is letting her anger out, she is seen as someone who is not fitting into the notion of femininity. She is not supposed to be that masculine kind of showing anger. But men on the other hand, if they show anger, they are seen as someone who is like, oh, he's so handsome, he's so powerful. This is the idea the society is imposing on the genders. And talking about the women by being the likable object, they are required to act according to the male gaze, how the men wants them to, fit in the notion of femininity. And she says there are a lot of women we know are pretending even today, that they are not being their true self because they're scared of the society, they're scared of how their family would turn out in the eyes of the society. And it's not because they do not have feelings or they do not have emotions. They have raw emotions deep inside, but for the sake of the society, for the sake of the femininity, so-called femininity, they are actually pretending for so many years that it's fine, they are okay with all this discrimination and all these things. And she says that women do not have to pretend for the sake of the society, because we have to rebel. And for years she says that anger has always changed things. It is through revolt that a lot many things in this world has changed. If you know history, And she says that if women are getting angry, if they are against this notion of gender of the society, she can change the world alone itself without the support of a man. And one more thing she addresses is that this is a common statement that you always hear when you say, for the peace of marriage I did this, for the peace of my marriage I did that. Adichie says that when a woman says that I did this for the peace of marriage, she always accounts to something that her ambition, her leaving back her career for her family. So that is what women say. And for in the case of men, if they say that I did it for the peace of my marriage, Adichie says that it is most probably for they were not allowed to go to the pubs after their wedding or pubs in the weekends or enjoy their life as they used to be before their wedding. But this is where I disagree with her, because I know this was speech was done in 2012, but according to me, the men in my life, the men in my family, they are also sacrificing just like the women in my family. So I strongly, 100% I don't agree to the statement, but still there was a time when men were like this. And the cooking, the term cooking is always, the society sees it like cooking is something that women naturally inherit. Women are supposed to cook. But the irony is that if you see, the cooks who handle the fancy title of the chefs are mostly of men. And Adichie questions that, then how does this notion of cooking comes to the women? And towards reaching to the end of the book, she says that her culture, she's a Nigerian, and she is following the Igbo culture. Her culture is always like giving importance to the men in their society, and she is men in their culture. She is someone who is actually too much interested in her culture to follow her tradition. But her brothers, the men in her culture, the men in her family, they are not interested in following their cultures at all. But she is someone, though she is interested in this culture, participating in this Igbo tradition, this culture actually doesn't want her to be part of it. It wants someone who is not interested to be in that culture. That is the men of her family, the men of her culture. And she says that culture is something it is something evolving. We have the ability to change it. It doesn't mean if we are following this culture, it doesn't mean that we have to follow this culture throughout years. We have the ability, we have the mental capacity to change this kind of thinking, to change this kind of culture. Actually, she says that just like how we teach our girl child to act differently, to grow differently, to think differently, why not we teach our men, why not we teach our boys to think differently? Or if the men and women of the community act together, only then we will be able to change the society. A single sex will not be able to do a lot many changes in the society. The men and women together, they can make some changes, is what Adichie says. And it is in this part, towards the end of the part, she now takes about the very first incident with Opolama, her friend, like brother, like friend. He addressed her as feminist, right? If you remember. So now she recalls back to that event, and she says that the first thing she went to, when she went back to her home, she looked it up in the dictionary, and she read, it was like the definition was like, a feminist is a person who believes in the social, political and economic equality of the sexes. And now when she understood the meaning, she understood that it is not something to be taken as an insult. Instead, it is something to be flaunt it. I am a feminist, I am a proud feminist. And it is not, feminist is not someone, how many of you believe here men and women can be feminist? How many of you believe? Yeah. So happy to say everyone believe men and women, of course they can be feminist. And that is why Adichie wants to say, it's not feminist, the job of the feminist, the notion of feminist is not linked to that of women itself. Anyone, any gender, man, woman or any gender who believes that they require equality to survive in this society, they can be called a proud feminist. And towards the last section, very last sentence of the paragraph, she says that her great-great-great-grandmother, years back, many years back, was a feminist, even before the term feminist came to life. Because her great-great-grandmother, she stood against the marriage which she did not want, and she ran away with the person she wanted to marry. So this is also a strong, notion of feminism. She stood for herself rather than agreeing to the atrocities of the society around her. And the very last sentence of this book concludes with saying that the best feminist that she ever knows in her life is her big brother, is her own brother, Hokini, who is a very strong and masculine man who is a feminist. But Adichie, one thing that I felt off about this is Adichie does not give any reasons why she called her big brother feminist. She just crosses her speech very blankly, calling him a feminist, that he was a feminist. But it would have been good if she added the reason why he was a feminist. And this is where the book ends. And overall, I believe that it was the strength of the book. I believe it was a very simple book. It was understandable in the first reading itself. Very brief, not using even the idea. If you're someone who knows about the concept of feminism, there are a lot of waves of feminism, which many of people will be familiar with. And instead of using Adichie, if she can use all these waves of feminism, ideas of feminism, and make it something complicated, but instead she rather chose it to be simple, to be natural, because she wanted her ideas to be supplied to every nook and corner of the world. And that's all about the book, and thank you.